I hope your day has been going well so far. This is the session where you get to ask me about anything that may be on your mind, which is a pretty wide open thing. Who would like to ask the first question this afternoon? Way up there. The question was, why are we DU and not U of D? That is a Rocky Mountain regional thing. We have always been DU. In the same sense, you will find the University of Colorado is CU, that sort of thing. And we've been asked that any number of times, actually. And if we were to go to U of D, there would be about 100,000 angry alumni out there writing letters to me, so I think we will just avoid the subject at this point. Who else? Oh, quiet. Yes, way up here. Did everybody hear that? The question was about the safety presentation, self-defense presentation for women, those kinds of things that were spoken about earlier. Why isn't it a part of what we do for all students? Actually, I think it is. I think ultimately we get to everyone and solicit their participation in those things very heavily, particularly at the beginning of their time at DU. It is a very safety-conscious campus. We are in the middle of a city, but I will tell you that I think we have one of the very best campus safety organizations that I have seen. Apart from that, when we're speaking about safety, we're in really good shape because we have the Denver Police Department District 3 office just over on the other side of I-25, and just south of us we have the Denver SWAT team. And for those of you who didn't attend, we interact with the police department quite thoroughly. We share a frequency, communications frequency with them and the like, and they can be on campus within 2 minutes. Apart from that, we have, Don, is it 36 officers, 36 officers in our own safety force. So we feel good about safety and security at the University of Denver on campus. We also feel good about the programs that we have for students, for them to be conscious about their own safety and to act accordingly. And we do pretty aggressively get them to participate in it. Well, that's a good that's a good point. I mean, we can certainly make it available on our website, if it isn't already, for everyone to take a look at, and we can certainly contact all of our parents. Thank you for the comment. We'll take you up on it. Yes. Right here. What is the advantage of the quarter system from the standpoint of the students' learning? The faculty, the last time we had a grand consideration of the calendar of the university, which was, I'd say, probably 6-7 years ago now, where there was a faculty vote and a student vote about whether to stay on quarters or go to early semester system, which is a prevalent system in the United States now. The faculty overwhelmingly, I think it was by 70-30, something like that, supported quarter system. And the comments that were being made at the time, the discussion among the faculty at the time, was that a quarter system allowed us, particularly a school our size, to offer a far greater variety of courses, particularly for students in their junior and senior year. And that is certainly the case. The opposite argument is whether a 15-week semester versus a 10-week quarter offers some greater degree of depth. I must tell you, though, that I think the argument has become all but moot at this point, because the truth of the matter is that we have classes of all different kinds of lengths now. We have 5-week classes, 10-week classes, 2-quarter classes, and that's the way that higher education is going. It's going to a much more flexible model. The latest in that conversation about the calendar among the university community has been about implementing a kind of more flexible calendar of that sort in a more intentional way than we have. It's sort of grown in over time according to the needs of students with a particular start date. And I think that that ultimately is the future, that you have the flexibility that can give rise to that great diversity of course offerings, particularly for upper class students. But you also have the flexibility to have courses that are longer if you need greater length to give greater depth. Yes? That's a very good question. The question was, what does the university counsel parents to discuss with their students about that first big winter quarter break between Thanksgiving and New Year's? I must tell you, with regard to a student opinion about the quarter system, the last time we took a vote, it was overwhelmingly positive. And that big break is one of the reasons, because there is this enormous variety of possibilities. Students, a lot of students will take seasonal jobs then. Close to 80% of our students are receiving some kind of financial aid, and that provides them an opportunity to do that. The university offers this vast array of interterm courses that students can also do at that point. We have a number of courses, and this speaks to the question about the calendar, a number of courses that do not end at Thanksgiving, but stretch into that interterm period. So it's really a very individualized thing. As a parent of students who a few years ago went to college, what I'd advise, and this is strictly a personal thing, I'd advise that in one way or another you keep their mind going, that it's a very good idea to keep them reading, whether they're taking a course or not. It's a very good idea to get them engaged in something going on, if they're at home, something going on at your town, a service project, public service project of some kind would be great. Things like that, that will add to what we're trying to do with them here at the university. Do I have comments from any of the deans or the provost about this?
We have so many different activities that the student chooses during that period. I can understand that there is a bit of a question that you would have. I would have it too, because that's a long time. they have left home, and now they're going to be home for a lengthy period. As the Chancellor said, a lot of students do work, but I would just second what he said. Keep them moving. We have them for 10 weeks. We've barely started the engine, and we don't want that to stop. So to the extent that they can get engaged, and as you know, there are tons of opportunities for that sort of activity now than there were, say, when we were growing up. So, you know, check out the schools, maybe some work in some community organizations. It would certainly be consistent with what we are pushing here at the university.
I think what you'll find is that there may be a little uncertainty with the first one, but after that, they're pretty thoroughly engaged, and they may not be asking you what they're going to be doing in that interterm period. It's actually a very good thing for our students. It really is. It really is a time that they can broaden themselves out and diversify the activities. Yes, right here.
Our young people are going to be with you for 4 years. So can you share some of the plans that are on the table, building projects, dreams, things you're excited about that we as parents are going to be seeing in the next couple of years?
Certainly. Question was about dreams, plans for the next 4 years, how things are likely to change at DU during the time that your sons and daughters are students here. The focus for the university, the principal focus for the university right now is improving academic quality. And you will see us not getting any bigger. In fact, we're a little bit bigger than we would like to be right now. This is the size we want to be, perhaps just a little bit smaller. But you will see us adding faculty, adding programs. You will see us building stronger bridges between the programs that we have established over the course of the last several years for undergraduates. A lot of the focus of our activity in the last several years has been on establishing key programs for undergraduates. The Charrington Global Scholars Program, that sort of thing. The Marsico Initiative you may have heard about in the arts and sciences, that's the writing program at DU and the like. I think where we're going from here is more robust bridges that tie that to what we're doing in our graduate schools, in the graduate professional schools. We have enormous strength at this university in international studies. The Corbell School, Joseph Corbell School of International Studies, which is largely a graduate school. We have an undergraduate major there, but it's largely a graduate school, is among the very best in the world. You may know that. It's ranked 10th, 12th, something like that in the world. That is an extraordinary opportunity for undergraduates to engage at that level. It's one of the great possibilities for students at DU because we have balance between, more than half of our students here are graduate students. And so our faculty have to be at a level where they can teach doctoral students. And so one of the challenges for us is to make certain that that's a really fluid sort of engagement for our undergraduates with those graduate programs. Within the graduate programs, what you will see us doing is focusing on a synthesis between what we're doing in international studies in the Corbell School, in the Daniels College of Business, and in the Sturm College of Law. You will see a lot of universities out there that will kind of paste programs together in business law, international studies, because that is an extraordinary combination of abilities for a student to have. What we are building is an actual integrated set of programs in those three areas that one hopes ultimately our undergraduates will have access to in the same sense that they have access to our traditional master's degrees through our 5-year dual degree programs. So that area, the sort of latter stage of the undergraduate program, when students are juniors and seniors, we really want them to have this sort of fluid access to the faculty that are principally working in those graduate professional schools. That's going to be a big area of focus for us. Construction projects, there are a number going on campus now. The major one is the Mortgage College of Education. That is, as you know, a graduate school that trains teachers and trains researchers as doctoral programs in education. We have a project that's adding a soccer stadium and a training center to the Ritchie Center. We've just finished an addition to the Charrington building, in addition to the International Studies building that opened this past summer. Another area of focus that has a construction project associated with it is the School of Art and Art History, where we have a major push going right now. We've added, there's a building up there. The School of Art and Art History is in Schwader Hall, which is up toward the Ritchie Center. It's right on Asbury. Tucked in behind the construction for the soccer stadium is an addition, an annex to the art building that is about 13,000 square feet. So it's essentially a 33% expansion of the facilities for the art school. That is studio space for painting and a couple of classrooms. So we're going to be pushing hard there. We're busily, we have a campaign going to raise money for the School of Art and Art History. Part of it is that facilities increase, part of it is financial aid for students. Part of it is adding faculty. Part of it is developing the bridges that we have now, the engagement we have now between the School of Art and Art History, the Denver Art Museum, the Clifford Still Museum, that hopefully will be built someday, the Museum of Contemporary Art. So it's about connecting what we're doing here in the visual arts to everything that's going on in the art scene in the city and those principal elements of it in the major museums. Should be a great advantage to the students that are there. We have a fair number of art majors, but large numbers of our undergraduate students will take art courses during the time that they're here. What am I missing? Engineering and the sciences. I'm a scientist, Joe, I should remember this. You will see us developing in the sciences a great deal, adding faculty, adding programs, once again in a sort of an integrative way. We have a program in the sciences called the Molecular Life Sciences Initiative that involves a large number of our faculty in biology and chemistry and physics, in the School of Engineering and Computer Science, that we are synthesizing together into a single sort of large group. You will see the research activities increasing there. You will see the classes associated with that general synthesized area increasing as well. In the School of Engineering and Computer Science, things have been changing really rapidly there. The size of that school is probably, Ramat, what? I saw Ramat was here, doubled in the course of the last 6 or 8 years, something like that. And its forte is interdisciplinary programs. They do wonderful and very different kinds of things there that you will not see in traditional engineering programs that are very much better matched to the needs of practicing engineers, practicing firms, the large firms out there. And we have a plan at some point to, if we can raise the money, to build a new building for engineering and computer science. That's the other major construction project out there in the course of the next several years on the south side of campus. And that school, we hope to get up to something on the order of, 700 students, I think is the goal, Ramat. And it's been progressing there rapidly. Would you like to comment on that at all, Ramat? Anything I've missed about engineering?
Probably those parents that were listening last night, they can probably close their ears. But the focus of our engineering computer science is really to educate entrepreneurs that not only understand the basics of engineering, but they understand how they take that technology into commercialization. And part of the building that the Chancellor was talking about, we are going to have a business incubator with the idea of letting our students and our faculty take what they create to the next level that would actually have impact on the community and on the economy. But the goal is not to educate traditional engineers, because there are many other universities doing that and they are doing a great job. But this country also needs those that not only understand technology, but they understand international activities, they understand business, they understand music. These are the type of interdisciplinary activities that we want to instill in our future graduates.
Thank you. You may know that I think more than a quarter of all of the students that get an engineering degree at DU also leave the university with a business degree. So the themes, I should sum this up, the themes are the connection between undergraduate and graduate programs, our interdisciplinarity for certain is a big theme with us, building in both the arts and in sciences and engineering. Yes? I think we have a pretty, the question was about the kinds of workshops for academic skills that we offer for students. I think we have a pretty robust communication system on campus. I think the major difficulty we face is not information flow. It's sort of encouragement of students to do it, to take the time. To do these kinds of things. That's where good advising comes in. I think that's part of the reason that we focus so much on making that faculty connection with a faculty advisor in the first year. That's a part of the first year mentoring program, first year seminars that of course have already begun in this orientation week, so that all of our students right out of the gate, starting with day one, have a relationship with a faculty member that evolves throughout the year. That, apart from information flow, it really is that sort of one-on-one counseling that drives students to the sort of services that they need. Without that, were that not to be in place, then I think no matter what sort of information were out there, lots and lots of students would simply not take advantage of it because they would think they wouldn't have time. When in point of fact, those things can be critical to them. Yes? The question was about DU being affected by the Great Recession. And the answer is our endowment is certainly down. Our endowment reached an all-time peak last July before the market suffered their crash into the fall. And so our endowment went down by about 22% and has now recovered back up. So I think it's down from that high by about 13%. And of course, that has an impact on dollars that are released from the endowment for operations. But that turns out to be a fairly minimal part of operations at DU. Another aspect of endowment spending is that our policy is for expenditure of annually of 4.5% of the value of any endowment fund, but that's averaged over the previous 3 years, 12 quarters. And so, since we had some pretty good quarters for endowment growth during that period, that really hasn't impacted us much. We were more impacted by interest earnings, a fall in interest earnings on our working capital. Financially, we are in quite good shape. That's the bottom line. We have good liquidity. and very solid working capital, and that's the reason that we were more impacted by interest earnings on that working capital than we were by reductions in our endowment. All of that being said, I think that the kinds of things that DU has developed in the sense of fiscal management over the course of the last 2 decades really served us very well so far in this current economic environment. And we are financially stronger than most institutions I know in an operating sense. Last year, we did reduce our operating budget. We reduced our staff largely through a voluntary severance program that was followed by an involuntary one that was much smaller. But I must tell you that that did not have anything to do with the economy. The 2 previous years were unquestionably our best years in a financial sense, in many senses actually, but in a financial sense we were very strong. And about now, let's see, almost 2 years ago, we started talking about tightening in the sense of making certain that the flexibility that we had financially, the resources that the university had, were placed firmly behind strategic directions for the university. And so we planned to tighten our expenditure budget a little bit, and we did that, implemented it very nicely in the span of about 3 months this past year. The idea was not to really reduce the university's budget, but to make more money available for things like student financial aid. And in fact, one of the things that we did as a result of this staff reduction was to push substantial more dollars into both need and merit-based financial aid this year for new students and for continuing students, and also into our fund for emergency financial aid for continuing students whose families suffered financial reverses of some kind in the course of the year. And we saw that coming and were able to push several $1 million into that fund, and requests, not surprisingly, requests for aid from that fund are up by about a factor of 3, Barbara, over last year. So I think our planning was good. I think we took advantage of the good years we had immediately before the markets declined and the recession set in to take a strong financial position and to move money into the places where we need it. So the prognosis for us is really very good at this point. Yes? The question was, how do students find out about what's going on the weekend? The answer is that there are limitless things going on the weekends, on campus and in the city. It's one of the advantages. No, but to answer your question, the answer is that there isn't a single source of information for everything that's going on in Denver all the time or in the mountains all the time. Oh, those kinds of things are on our website, for sure. Do you want to speak to that, Patty or Joe? Carl, are you the most?
Campus activities. We just, over the course of the summer, the students have taken on a new project called Explore Denver. And so they've taken some of their activity fee through student government and said, we'll set that aside for any student who wants to go to the Performing Arts Center. We'll have discounted tickets to that group. We'll have free admission to the zoo, free admission to the art museum downtown, free admission to the Nature and Science Museum. So we're starting a new program in campus activities to coordinate, kind of like every Thursday you'll go to the Student Center and have a printout or an opportunity to see what's going on in downtown Denver and in the surrounding areas. In addition, we have many clubs and universities, organizations like the Alpine Club takes hiking trips and ski trips and mountain climbing trips and that whole 9 yards. So there's a wealth of information. We just encourage them to check the website, as the Chancellor said, the campus activities website, and come to the Driscoll Student Center, 3rd floor.
Yeah. So that stuff is to be found on the DU site, largely. But from the DU site, you can connect to a variety of sites in the city if you want to search the whole thing. Yes. Yes.
I've been attending today as an aunt of an East Coast student, and I'm the Colorado aunt, and I've been very impressed with what I've heard. And I'm just wondering, and I have college-age children that are going to other schools, and I'm wondering what you're looking for in a transfer student.
Well, the short answer is we look at transfer students no differently than we do first-year students. We look for, I mean, Tom and Todd can give you the full answer from admissions, but I can tell you we look for people who have the promise for really connecting with that intellectual life that's on campus, who have that focus and have the ability to do so. But beyond that, I mean, we really do look at the whole person, to use that sort of trite phrase. The extent to which students have actually used their minds in school but outside of school as well. Do they show evidence of the sort of development of their values and their commitments over time? I mean, DU is a very particular place, and I'm sure all of you as parents have heard how we've talked about the fact that the experience here is one that really expands people's minds. It sharpens up their intellect. It really locks in their minds to that intellectual life that we hope will hold them, you know, for decades and decades and decades to come. But it is much broader than that. They develop as human beings in an amazing way during the time that they're here. And that's by, at least partially by design. It's partially through the culture of the university. So we look for students for whom that fit is particularly good. And I think our admission staff does a wonderful, wonderful job at finding those students for whom that fits good. It's part of the reason that we have the Hyde interview program, where we really do push hard to have students sit down and talk with us. There's nothing like that face-to-face engagement for them to find out about us, for us to find out about them. No. Yes?
I get from here. I also appreciate everything that I've been hearing here, and I am the parent of an East Coast student, not the aunt of an East Coast student. I appreciate also that there is a lot of financial aid. I appreciate the cost-cutting measures that you were taking into account already before the Great, what did they call it? The Great Recession, thank you. I didn't want to say depression. And financial aid is great for the families who get it. I would guess even for families who do receive financial aid, it doesn't make college easy financially. There is a sacrifice that goes with this. There's a sacrifice on people's retirements in the future, a sacrifice for lifestyle during the college years. And when I look across the country at the costs of college tuition for private colleges, I wonder if we're not running into the place where we're going to start to squeeze out those students who don't qualify for the financial aid and whose families aren't able to do it easily. And I wonder what your view is about your tuition itself, as opposed to putting more money into financial aid, maybe reducing the cost of tuition or containing the cost of tuition. And I think my bottom line question is, you know, what do you see for tuition increases over the next 4 years for this class of students? Thank you.
Thank you. That is a really, really good question. And I must tell you that I think you are exactly right, that the absolute cost of higher education, for whether you're talking about private institutions or public institutions, has gotten to a point where it stresses the ability of almost everybody. And the danger is that it will reduce the audience for higher ed still further. If you look at the numbers out there, you find that something like 2/3 of bachelor's degrees are granted to students whose families are in the top quartile of family incomes, less than 10% to students whose families are in the bottom quartile. And these are degrees granted by the time the students are 24. And that certainly speaks to an enormous imbalance. And so the task for private higher education is to use the resources that we have to make certain that as broad an audience as possible in the sense of socioeconomic distribution has access to what we're doing here at the University of Denver. That being said, I think we should realize that the costs are real and they're not inflated. And the difference between large public institutions and private institutions has to do in a lot of ways with the numbers of faculty, the student-to-faculty ratio. A diminishing part of it, actually, is the subsidy, state subsidy for state institutions. That's a diminishing part of it. But I think you will find that in state institutions, large state institutions of the sort that dominate the higher education scene in the West, that the operating model is entirely different. And you will find very, very much higher student-to-faculty ratios there. Ours is about 10 for undergraduates. Averaged overall, when you average in the graduate professional schools, is just a little bit over 12. And that is half to a third of the student-to-faculty ratio that you will find at the big publics. And that is by intent. We think that that is related in a very intimate way to the quality of the experience for our students. We believe in what we're doing here. We really do think that the experience that we're providing, educational experience and all of the surrounding experiences, cultural experiences that have to do with being at the university, really do require the sort of costs that we're incurring per student. That being said, we have to find ways to offset that. We really do. The traditional way to do that among private institutions is to build up an enormous endowment with investment gains that offset that cost so that the absolute cost of tuition can be brought down. To get there, you know, I think these days you see a kind of an optimum. You find that the institutions, the privates in the East, that have enormous endowments became overly dependent on them, and they are hurting very badly at this point. I think there is a kind of an optimum. I can tell you what our objective is. Our objective is to build our endowment to a point where it is between double and triple our annual operating budget. And we think that there's a good balance there that will afford us the ability to provide levels of financial aid that will keep keep access to DU for a quite broad audience. Right now, I can tell you right now, our situation is pretty good. For example, the proportion of students at DU, undergraduate students who are receiving Pell Grants, those are need-based grants from the federal government, is about the same, maybe a little bit higher than the University of Colorado, for example. So we're doing pretty well there. But to answer your question about tuition increases in that context, I could not agree more that the absolute cost is reaching an upper bound, The tuition increases that we've had for the last couple of years, which have been in the sort of 4+% range, are among the lowest. The average for private higher ed has been 6.5%. In the future, I think these things are going to level out to 2.5, something like that. Simply because of us reaching that top. So our strategy, and actually the issues it presents for a high quality private higher educational institution like ours, where we do not intend to grow So we do not intend to generate new funds by simply growing the student body greater. We do intend to make continuing investments in the quality of the enterprise. Is to generate additional revenue largely through fundraising, to build our endowment, to help us buy down the cost of tuition. The bulk of our endowment funds are in financial aid at this point. And to maintain the growth of costs. Maintain the growth of costs. We think we can do that pretty well. As I was saying, I think in a financial sense, we're really quite sophisticated relative to the other institutions that I know. And we run our models out years in advance and know pretty well what we're doing. So we believe it can be done, that we can control those costs. This is a very long-winded answer, but I hope it's getting to your question. It's a really good question. Yes?
Is this working? The university's name aside, do you consider the school a regional university, a Colorado university, a Denver university? And a second part to that question, can you describe your relationship between town and gown?
Town and gown. Well, first of all, I would say we are a national university. If you look at this entering class and in the classes in the last several years, the majority of our students come from out of state. And they come from pretty far away. There is this old adage that one hears in various forms from one year to the next, and that is that something like 85% of undergraduate students will go to a college within 300 miles of home, state boundaries aside, essentially a day's drive. If you draw a 300-mile radius around Denver, there are no other big towns. And so among our student population is this interesting sort of bimodal distribution. We have lots of students, maybe 42% of our students, who are from the Rocky Mountain region, from Colorado, from Denver. And that stretches up into Wyoming and over to Utah and the like. And then we have lots and lots of students who are from far away, from the East Coast, from the population centers in the upper Midwest, from Florida, from Texas, all up and down the West Coast. And so the answer to your first question is that we have, without question, a national footprint, and so I would consider us to be a national university. We would like to be more of an international university. We have about, not quite 1,000, between 900 and 1,000 international students. And roughly 2/3 of them are graduate students. We'd like to see that number increased. We think it enriches the campus because we have such great strength in international studies through the Charrington Global Scholars Program, through a raft of programs in the disciplines and through the graduate professional schools, and of course with the Corbell School. We're positioned very well to become really the great international school for Denver as it becomes more of an international city. That's an aspiration of ours. Okay, so to answer your second question, town-gown interactions, which is related in a way because we are the University of Denver and we've been here for 144 years now. And that means we have very deep roots here. When DU began, when DU was founded in 1864, there were only about 3,000 people in this town. The town of Denver dates its founding from 1858. And so we were founded in 1864, and there was almost nothing here. And so we have been here very nearly as long as there has been any kind of Denver at all in this place. And so that means a lot to us, and we believe that a lot of the character of the institution has grown in as the city and the region have grown, and that's a good thing. There are lots, this is an extraordinarily vital, energetic town, region, and the university has absorbed and contributed to, I think, the growth of that character. As we become a national and hopefully international, more international university, we want to carry that flag with us. We want to carry the Denver name with us. We think that's a part of our obligation to this place. Specifically, in terms of town-gown relationships, we develop those in a very intentional way. We believe that the university should be an asset to the growth of the culture and the economy of the city and the region. And that should not happen in a simply passive way, but it has to happen in an active way. And so we engage the institution with lots and lots of different communities within the city and within the region by intent, in the sense of engaging the intellectual assets that we have here with the major issues that are happening out there, with all kinds of things having to do with education, with the growth of the business community, all kinds of things like that. We can play a major role, and our faculty do play a major role. That's great for the institution, it's great for the city, but it's also great for our students. If you think about how we approach these things, we talk about engaging our students, and that being one of the principal ways that they can grow and learn. That engagement provides this vast array of opportunities for our students to work with our faculty directly on issues that are facing the people of the city and the people of the region. It's a wonderful, wonderful advantage to us being in the middle of this metropolitan region. Yes? That's a good question. The placement of students. How does that work when they're graduating? How do they find jobs? How active are we in helping them find jobs? For a long time, it really wasn't much of an issue. We were very well connected in the region and nationally. The fact that we have major graduate professional schools here certainly improved our position in that regard. And the proportion of students finding jobs who were looking for jobs when they graduated was very high, well into the 90s. And our approach was, in all honesty, a reasonably passive one because it was working. Of course, that changed with the onset of the recession. And so we have had to work harder at that. We have been, last year we started a conversation about developing our alumni base in a more active way so that the university could, to a greater degree, play the sort of matchmaker role between our students and the industries where we are well represented out there, whether it's business or engineering or law or whatever it may be. And so I think we're getting better at that as the economy has pushed on us. Let me say also that in any year, it fluctuates a lot, but in any year, anywhere between 25–30%, I've seen it as high as 45% in a year of our students will go directly to graduate school of one kind or another. And given the abilities of our students these days, that's not surprising. So I'm talking about the students who don't move directly onto graduate school, who enter the workforce immediately. I think that by the time your students graduate, you will see a placement operation here that is really much more aggressive than it has had to be in the past years. I can't give you numbers about that. All I can say is until the recession hit this past year, we were doing very well indeed, but that's not so much the point that you're making. The point is, how active and aggressive are we? And that is a conversation that's been going on for about a year now, and I think we've begun to implement it well. So it should have a very positive impact on your students. One more. Please. That's a good question. The question was about carrying our focus on ethics and values and honor and integrity to a still higher level in light of the recent scandals that have been out there that seem to be endless anymore. I mean, I can remember back to years ago when we thought that the things going on after Enron were a wave, but they've been sort of continuing ever since then. The answer to your question is I don't believe we've backed off at all. In fact, I do believe that the intensity of the focus on integrity has increased here. It is a matter of the culture of the campus more than anything else. We have curriculum. We have a major program that began in the Daniels College of Business 15 or more years ago and has expanded through the campus now. But that's an instructional program. The real focus is on culture. And I think that happens through the interactions that our students have with faculty. This gets to the question about advising. Ethical standards and ethical behavior are communicated in a lot of ways, but principally by our faculty, I would say. There have to be ongoing conversations about that through this first year, and I think you will find that to be the case in all of these first-year seminars that we have, that there's an element there of ethics and values, as there should be. So your question was about raising it to the next level. In my mind, that's not so much a programmatic issue. We have a huge raft of programs. It's more a matter of sort of intensifying that focus on ethics and values within the campus community. And I think we're doing a pretty good job at that. I really do.